Render to Caesar that which is Caesar's, and to God that which is God's. Very good advice. That is excellent advice. And this happens to be a matter where we have a great deal to learn from our ancestors. I think most especially of the Middle Ages. This actually was a remarkably important topic of debate for them back then. So keep in mind, I'm referring to an era where kings and emperors were everywhere. Democracy wasn't really a thing yet. And in terms of religion, I'm of the opinion that people don't really change all that much over time. People back then, like today, a lot of people poorly practiced their faith. Folks 1,000 years ago, they weren't that different from us. But one thing that absolutely was different is that Christianity was baked into the very fabric of society. So almost everybody back then was a Christian, at least in name only. So with that, kind of basic background in your head, one thing they asked one another kind of frequently back then was this: who has ultimate authority? The emperor or the pope? The wisest thinkers of the era correctly observed that the right answer is both. Absolutely. They said that society is like a planet orbiting two suns, the emperor and the pope, state and the church. It is not the case where one is the sun and one is the moon, where one is significantly more important than the other. No, we need both of them, and we need both to be unable to claim dominance over the other. And the reason that is such a fantastic answer is that when the church gets too powerful, the faith becomes corrupted, religious leaders end up worshiping themselves, and then they get other people to worship them from there. This is how we end up with inquisitions and holy wars and schisms. Those things come from faith that has lost its humility. And faith without humility is a very dangerous thing, because it teaches us to mold God into our own image. And that's backwards. Now, on the other hand, when the state gets too powerful and pushes God off to the side, we suffer every bit as much as a society. That state stops seeing its citizens as people worth loving and caring for, and more like resources to be managed and exploited. That kind of state, over time, will deny its people what we call in the church their interior reality. Your interior reality is your spiritual dimension, your moral freedom, and your basic human dignity. So in other words, a corrupt state will say, you don't have a soul and God isn't important. You do not have the freedom to make decisions regarding your own life. We will make those decisions for you. And you are not special or important in any way, so get back to work. Eventually, those citizens will only live the way their government allows them to live. And the process in which that becomes more and more of a reality, that process is so much fun at the beginning. Because in the beginning, the state will give you stuff, and it will tell you exactly what you want to hear, because frankly, it is trying to buy your loyalty. If you think I'm just making this up, I will remind you, this is exactly what happened a few years ago in Nicaragua. The absolute worst man for the job was elected president. He is a very literal dictator in every sense of the word now, and he won that election by promising all the young voters of the country soccer balls. They sold out their country for soccer balls. I don't think God gets aneurysms, but if he does, I feel like that would just about do it. I can picture God just like rubbing his temples in heaven like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. You know, it's like but that happens. And it always ends the same way. It ends resembling slavery or tyranny. And this is a pattern we have seen play out in history over and over again. I could just as easily be talking about ancient Egypt or the French Revolution or the Soviet Union for three fairly obvious examples. The citizens at the beginning of those processes, they probably thought they were on the ground floor of something amazing and revolutionary, and they had no clue how much they and their descendants would lose because they gave everything to the state. And when a state cannot be challenged by anything other than a bigger, larger state, it is always the common people who pay the price, every time. So what's the solution? It's not anarchy, it's not revolt, it's not revolution. Those things are not well known for solving problems. The solution is to regain that sense of a society of two sons. The best civilizations we have ever produced on this planet has involved a strong government, but also a spiritual force of some kind that is supported by the people. And so you have a government that can't suppress the religion, and a religion that can't just tell the government what to do. That is what leads to stability. That is what becomes checks and balances. And frankly, it is wisdom that we have had at our fingertips for at least 2,000 years. Render to Caesar that which is Caesar's, and to God that which is God's. And we can never afford to forget this wisdom. Again, Nicaragua being my example, this is still a common problem. As human beings of any time or place, any era of history, any country in the world, we need more than one power base in our culture. Because no one, I mean literally no one, is worthy or qualified to have absolute control over a people. When Jesus talks about Caesar, he does not refer to Caesar as an enemy or even a competitor. Caesar represents legitimate secular authority that is to be respected alongside the equally legitimate authority of Holy Mother Church. So by all means, be a good citizen, certainly pay your taxes, render to Caesar that which is Caesar's, but never forget to also render to God what is God's.